Today I'm going to explain to you who this creepy looking guy is, what he's up to, and how him and his friends met a very disturbing end. So a few days ago I posted a video about Daniel Boone and Bigfoot, and guys, thank you so much. I got so many subscribers and so many likes and so many watches. You guys are awesome, and thank you for doing that. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button down below. That way you don't miss the video that I already posted and the videos that we have coming up next. So if you're not from Missouri or the surrounding areas, you may never have seen this picture, and you may not know that this is what we call a bald knobber. Now, bald knobbers were in Missouri right after the Civil War, because after the Civil War in Missouri, there was not a lot of law and order going around, and these gangs of people called bushwhackers would come in and raid the cities and rob people and things like that, and nobody was getting punished for that. And of course, the general population was suffering because of it. So in about 1883, there was a guy in a little town called Forsyth, Missouri, which is near Branson, if you know where that is. His name was Nat Kinney, and he decided to take matters into his own hands, and he formed what he called a vigilance committee. Now, this committee is what eventually turned into the Bald Knobbers. The name comes from the fact that in the Ozarks, hills are known as knobs, and they met on top of a hill that didn't have trees on it, so it was a bald knob. People started calling them that to kind of make fun of them, but the name stuck. Forsyth and Branson are in a county called Taney County, and then there's another county just north of that called Christian County. Now, these guys that were dressed up in these creepy looking masks, they were from Christian County, and they were by far the worst of the two groups. There were other groups scattered about as well, but the Taney County and Christian County ones were probably the most famous. So they started in Taney County with Nat Kinney, and of course they started doing things that were good for the community. So if they knew of somebody stealing hogs or beating their wife, they would leave a bundle of switches on their porch as kind of a warning. And then if you didn't heed their warning, they would come and then beat you with those switches. They also took some guys out of jail that were accused of mutilating the local cattle, and they hung them. So I say they did good things. It was vigilante justice, but at least they started out with good intentions. Eventually, though, those good intentions turned into what the bald knobbers wanted. And so they started harassing people that they just didn't want in town. So there was one case where one of the bald knobbers wanted to buy a farm. So they ran the tenant off the farm by threatening him. People that had witnessed some of their crimes got run off. So eventually the bald knobbers kind of turned into what they didn't like. Now, the Taney County bald knobbers went on for a while, but eventually the people of Taney County formed a militia, and the bald knobbers agreed to stop. The guy, Nat Kinney, that was in charge of those bald knobbers ended up being shot to death in 1888 by someone that was an anti-bald knobber. Now, the Christian County bald knobbers were much, much worse. These guys were known more for beating people and punishing people that they had moral issues with. So they would go after people that they thought were lazy or they thought drank too much. Not to mention the fact that these bald knobbers had a cave where they were playing poker and bootlegging, but you know, we're not going to mention that if we're the bald knobbers. And they were involved in one of the most famous murders down there. They murdered two men, William Edens and Charles Green. Now, what happened is that one night, the Christian County bald knobbers were all dressed in their crazy outfits and were ready to raid what we think was a rival bootlegger group. But for whatever reason, the leader, Dave Walker, decided not to do that. But now he's got all of these men that are ready for action and ready to do something. And someone suggested they go by William Edens' house. Now, William Edens was one of those guys that just couldn't seem to keep his mouth shut. And they had already paid him one visit where they beat him. And he just kept talking about the bald knobbers and making fun of them and disparaging them. So they went to William Edens' house. He was at home. So they decided to go to William Edens' father's house, where they found William Edens and his father and extended family. I think there were about 6 of them in the house, including maybe a newborn baby as well. The bald knobbers went into the house, fired their guns. There were axes involved, and Charles and William were both killed by the end of it. Now, the county was pretty fed up with them by this point, so the county actually arrested people and convicted them and sentenced 3 of them to die by hanging. So Dave Walker, his son William Walker, and John Matthews were all sentenced to hang. And this is where they meet a terribly disturbing end. So on the day of execution, they walked up to the scaffold. The scaffold doors dropped. John Matthews died instantly like he was supposed to. Dave Walker, his rope was too long and he was left kind of dangling with his feet touching the ground. And according to some reports, the sheriff and others had to pull him down to help him strangle to death. And then his son William got the worst of it, and his noose completely unraveled and he fell to the ground. They tied William up again and it fell again. And on the 3rd try, according to reports, his noose was too long and he strangled for 16 minutes. So, I mean, what a terrible, awful way to die, especially when you think he was only 20 at the time. So that's a quick history of the bald knobbers, what they were, what they did. Come back next time. I think we're going to talk about that Scottish play, you know, the cursed play from Shakespeare. So I will see you next time.